We do have a quorum. So let me call to order the regular monthly meeting of the EDC, August 4th, 2022. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Now, I do want to say this does not pertain to the agenda that you see on your screen, but the agenda that was physically published does not have the housing update on it. So I am requesting that we add the housing update to the agenda. Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda? No, hearing none. Citizen comments. For those of you who are not EDC, oh, Endeavor's here, great. For those of you who are not EDC members, the way we encourage strongly community participation, we usually have time for comments throughout the meeting. So what we like to do is if you have comments on a topic that is not on the agenda, you should make it now. Otherwise, you can make your comments during when we're discussing the items on the agenda. In particular, if you're here to talk about what our overall priorities should be, and we posted on the listserv what we were narrowing down to, which were 5, expanding childcare capacity, expanding workforce housing capacity, marketing Woodstock, physically revitalizing the downtown area, and supporting events. Those were the 5 that we were considering. Some people are advocating we have fewer than 5 among those. If you want to talk about any of those 5, hold off until we come to our first discussion on priorities. Or if you want to talk about marketing or our housing project, then hold off. If you have any other comments on any other topics from anyone in the community. Going once? I have only one comment, which is to welcome, am I saying it right, Tao? Teo, sorry. I know another person. Teo from WCTV. It's great to have WCTV back online. And if you all remember that pre-Zoom, they were always recording our meetings, and they're recording it now. We get some better video from them than we do from Zoom. So hopefully, and you're going to merge possibly the 2 recordings so we get the best of both worlds. So welcome back, and it's great to have you, not just for the EDC, but for everything in the community. Okay, approval of the minutes. The minutes are posted. The minutes are not posted on the website. So I'm going to ask that we postpone the approval of approving the minutes from July 21st until our next meeting. And Nikki, could you please remind me to put that on the agenda at our next meeting?
You need that seconded?
Sorry?
You need that seconded?
Well, no, I don't know, because we're not, we're just moving on. I think it's not, okay. I don't think we have a motion. Okay, then moving on to old business, which is our continuing discussions, overall priorities, and the best ways to advance economic and community development. Just a quick preview. You're going to all get tired of this chart until we're done with it, but it represents the broadest definition of what we could do. In our last 2 discussions or 3, we have not had any major suggestions to do anything beyond this, but we have questioned most things on this in the spirit of let's do a few things. We agreed last time that we would start this discussion in the first bullet point as to how many, and in particular, which of the 5 priorities that we have narrowed down to should we be pursuing. If we have time, and we need to retain some time for our other topics, we can discuss the loan fund and the community fund, which now I characterized our conclusions in the listserv as the following. This is my interpretation, which is a number of people were supportive of the idea of a loan fund or a community fund. There was a pretty clear sense that with most people, not all, that we wanted to make sure that they did not distract us from developing big proposals in our core areas, 3, 4, or 5 of those, whichever they were. There were actually, but there was someone, at least one person, I can't remember who said, no, we need to actually be involved in those, that's our primary responsibility to do things like a community fund. So there's not a consensus yet around that. That's sort of where I think we got to the last time. And so I'd just like to propose that we start with discussing the 5 working groups and trying to see whether or not A, we can come up with a list of what our priorities are, and B, we can define what it means to have it be a priority. For example, does it mean that we will not entertain any proposals, ad hoc proposals in another area? Does it mean that we will only have working groups in our priority areas? It might mean that, and so forth. So I would just like to start by going around first for the EDC, just to see where we stand. And I'd just like to ask each of you, I'm happy to go first in this case, to say how many you think we should have and which ones you think those should be. And if you want to briefly comment about those 2 points, and I'll happy to go first because I usually go last. It won't surprise you. This is my proposal. So this is what I think. I think we should work on all 5 of these. I don't think we should give big proposals to any other things. I would not prevent a community group who had a big, well-done proposal from coming before us on some other topic. I think we can only benefit from that. But I would not create more working groups for anything other than these 5. I've been convinced that we shouldn't be competing, that if we do these 5, we should commit to funding over the years all 5 of these areas. It doesn't mean we would fund every single one every year in equal amounts, but I do think we should have a principle that says we will provide funding over the next 5 years. We would expect to provide meaningful funding to all 5 of these, or if we have 3, to all 3, whatever that number would be. But I think we should have these 5 and no more. So I'll stop there. Does anyone want to go next?
I got a quick,
Marion.
just, I think my first response to I understand the concern about competition and putting in work that wouldn't yield anything, but I would say, I think we have to at least say, it's quite possible that a committee meets for 6 months and comes to the conclusion that there isn't an efficient way to spend the money to support that. And so I don't think we should assume that we'll support all 5 until we know kind of what the plans are.
Absolutely.
That's
no promises. But our intention would be not to foster competition and eliminate, but to fund as hopefully all of them if they were good proposals. That would be what I would say. Go ahead.
No, I agree.
Okay, and what about which ones and by definition and how many?
I haven't thought that through enough to say something intelligent about it.
All right. Patrick, you're here, and then I'll turn timeline. Do you want to go next?
Yeah. I like the idea of the 5. I think there are some that aren't as big as I think what I think we should do, which is really look to funding several of these that are going to be over multiple years with a good amount of money. But something like supporting and expanding key events, that's going to be event specific. So I think that may go up or down. Same thing with revitalizing the physical downtown area. I think those 2 aren't quite as big a priority. I mean, not that they're not a priority, but not quite as big as the other 3.
And let me just put a point on it. Would you be opposed to having working groups in those areas? Maybe with the guidance, if it's a consensus, to say, look, we're not, our appetite for these 2 might be somewhat smaller than the others, but not necessarily, but that's our hypothesis. If you want to have a working group, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there should be a working group because that's the only way we're going to know,
right?
Whether what the possibilities are.
Okay. All right, let's go online. Larry, you've got your hand raised. Go ahead.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm also in favor of all 5, although I do not. I'm just going to assume that somebody or one of the groups has some idea about revitalizing the physical downtown area and what would be a big project there. I don't know about it. I don't know that we've heard anything about it. So I guess I'm supporting that only as a theoretical thing, whereas marketing, expanding childcare, expanding housing supply, and expanding key events, I understand, and we've done something there. So I wouldn't want to undermine some activity towards revitalizing physical downtown area. I just don't know what anybody has in mind for that.
Okay, and I can give you a quick update on that, but I don't want to advocate right now, so let's just keep going, and then we can come back to that. Anyone else? Michael, Mika, Deborah, Joe. Michael, and then Mika.
Yeah, so I mean, just to.
Oh, and then
supply
Deborah,
a-
sorry, you're below, and Deborah, then Joe. Okay.
Sorry, Larry, I get what you're saying. I think we also don't know what events could have come up or what the housing working group is going to come up with specifically. So I think like all these things are great, but what happens is we really don't know what the subgroups are going to actually present to us, right? So at that point is where we really make the decision, say, okay, well, hey, the housing thing, yeah, maybe we think that's great. And this year we're going to go with that versus events because maybe we don't have enough requests for events. But so I guess I'm fine with this because this is just kind of a initial list. But I think I personally would like to see something helping to some degree businesses in town. And I mean, everything is vacant downtown. So I feel like that's a big thing that needs to have a working group. Like I would love to see something to that effect.
Okay, Michael, when we come, we're not at the last meeting, but the topic of loan fund did come up at the prior meeting when you were here, but we talked about it a little bit more at the last meeting, and that may begin to address that the loan fund is targeted at existing and new businesses. No, that doesn't completely answer your question, but it gets closer to it. So then the five do.
And the loan fund would also be available to childcare facilities and maybe housing developers or something as well. Is that correct?
Sure. I mean, I think we would housing developers for sure, because that's a business. Well, yeah, I suppose we haven't. Yeah, I guess the short answer is we haven't discussed it, but on the surface, yes.
I think if it's appropriate.
Yes, I don't see why it wouldn't. We haven't talked about limiting it. So I'm just responding to your point about there is.
Yeah, I mean, I missed the last meeting, so I'm just kind of saying, well, businesses grants versus loans. I don't know. That's just an idea.
Okay. All right, let's keep going. Mika, Deborah, Joe.
Yeah, I am in big favor of what's been proposed here with these 5 major working groups. I've long wanted the loan fund, so I feel like that's a really great initiative. And I'm happy to see that a community fund is on there. I don't think it's appropriate for us to not give at least a little bit of attention to somebody that comes in with a smaller idea. I'm curious, Michael, my brain is just trying now to kind of catalog the shops downtown. When you said everything is empty, it feels like we're doing pretty well. I mean, granted, yes, the old pharmacy, the old breakfast place is empty, Mountain Creamery. And I mean, the pharmacy is under construction, it's owned. Hopefully it'll be occupied. I don't know. I feel like we're doing pretty good, right? But anyway, that's an aside. That's just my brain's now trying to catalog the places downtown and figure out what's empty and what's not. But I am in big support of these 5 working groups. And yeah, excited to get started.
Deborah, and then Joe.
So,
We're waiting for Deborah's dog. Oh, there we go.
No, it wasn't my dog this time. Mine is a deeper bark.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm in support of what we've come up with, especially with the loan and the community fund and taking some of our attention away or over here towards the community fund so that we could focus on these groups. The only one that, I really go back and forth about or have a slight issue with is revitalizing the physical downtown. Not because I don't think it's an important thing to do, but you're talking about giving large chunks away for these different things. And they're going to be very expensive to do. I'd like to see us focusing on the childcare and the housing. I mean, I think as it is, those are going to end up costing us most of our money. And the other 4 those 4 groups feel more urgent given what we're coming out of than revitalizing the downtown in a way where we're assisting buildings that should be taken care of by owners. However, though,
Clarifying question, sorry.
But Deborah, finish up and then maybe you can ask a question, and then Joe, go ahead.
yeah, and with the loan fund and with our grant manager now, we are here to support those owners who, might need a grant. We're actually, we have something in our, toolbox for them. Come to the grant manager and we'll help you try to find, a grant to do what you should be doing with your property.
Mika, did you have a question of Deborah?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, just a clarifying, because I think Deborah makes a really good point there. So I'm looking at these 5 working groups, or any working groups really, and imagining it sort of as like a first come, first serve kind of thing. We only have so many dollars. And so we have these working groups, and if a working group comes up with a plan that seems viable, fundable, it's going to actually make progress, it's going to make a dent in whatever kind of problem we're trying to help solve for, then perhaps that's something that gets funded. And if that takes, I don't know, $100,000, and that means we only have X number of dollars left, then so be it. And I just am asking sort of the process here. I'm not necessarily advocating for it to go that way. That's how I'm understanding this process should go.
May I jump in for a second, John, before you respond to that? I
Yes,
mean, it's
go
kind
ahead.
of as part of it. Just so I'm really clear on what I'm saying. For me, in my head, I'm all about how many people are we missing from the community in workers, and how, and people to make the community sing, right? That don't have houses, that don't have childcare, that, that don't have staff. These are the most important things, I think, to get the community up and running again. Revitalizing the physical downtown, awesome. I just don't feel this is the next couple of years are the years to put the money towards that, when we, have restaurants that aren't open and people don't have childcare and people don't have housing. I think I think that's where we should be focusing.
Okay,
And then we can revitalize. And that's why I was trying to say, and if you want to revitalize in the meantime, come and talk to our grants manager and they will go ahead and help you find a grant.
okay, Joe?
Yeah, thank you. I sometimes feel the danger of us spreading ourselves too thin. And I'm personally, I'm kind of conscious of that. And, there is some concern. So in that vein, I say to myself, okay, so what would the community itself, how would the community itself get the best bang for their buck? Making it a strong, vital, and high energy community. Because, as long as I've lived here, the energy has changed. I mean, I've actually witnessed it, where when they first came here, it was kind of a old time horse and buggy kind of thing, and just kind of in that, and not moving very fast out of that. And now I feel, the momentum has changed a little bit, and thoughts and wants have changed from what they were 30 years ago or 25 years ago. And there's good and bad of that, but I think mostly good. So having thought about that and looking at these 5 categories, in my opinion, I think what would benefit the community initially the most would be focusing on childcare and housing. I think those 2 issues in themselves are interconnected. They're kind of gonna feed on each other. I mean, without housing, and without housing, you're not gonna get enough teachers to come into town and to teach at these daycare centers, and we do need the daycare centers. So it's kind of interconnected there. And with that, and moving with that, I think the tentacles of those two issues, if they're done and done right, you know, can spur other things that we're concerned about. You know, revitalizing downtown, I think, is important because, you know, given what I just said, I think it'd be a mistake to lose focus on the fact that we are still a tourist-based economy. And it's important to have a good face, I think, in my opinion. You know, first impression is the lasting one, all those things, that they're important. But on that issue of revitalizing, from what I can see, and what I've learned a bit of, I don't think a whole lot of money is going to be needed initially. I think the first year or so has to be done planning and researching grant money, state money, and actually getting that money and how to get that money, how it can be applied and where it can be applied. Before you really start to, you know, I don't believe in the shotgun effect, you know, just blast away. Let's have a plan. Let's think about how to do it, where to do it, and where we're going to get the money. And that's going to take a little time. So initially, I don't think there's going to be a big demand on EDC money, a big demand. Some maybe, but not a big demand. Events, I can't help but feel that I think it'd be a mistake for EDC to focus a lot on events. I think, and this is just my opinion, events should fall in the category of the Chamber of Commerce. Now, you know, we can have a discussion about whether that would happen or not, but I really feel that that really appropriately where they belong, with our support, of course, and with our input, you know, but I really feel a driving force should be the Chamber of Commerce. That's just the way I feel about it. Now, how we make that happen, that's another discussion, conversation altogether. The community fund, I think it's important only because it lets the town know that we're still alive and we're doing it. You know, we get involved with housing and childcare, there's going to be a lot of work and a lot of research, a lot of conversation, and some money involved. But, you know, most of the community isn't really going to know about that stuff, I don't think, unless we put something in the paper every week. But the community fund, you know, when somebody wants $5,000, $7,000, something, that's going to kind of resonate to the community and say, yeah, these guys are still on the ball, and, you know, and then putting some effort into the community. They're still alive. So in that respect, and the way that John suggested it be structured, I think is probably, in my opinion, the best way to go. Have an independent committee who looks at these things and makes a judgment about what is appropriate, and then come and tap into whatever amount of money that we allocate on a yearly basis, $30,000, $40,000, whatever that might be. The loan fund. Well, again, $5,000 to hire a lawyer, which we've done, to look into the feasibility of it and how it should be structured, I think well spent. But then in reality, the way I see it, depending on who applies and how much they apply for, is that going to take up a lot of money? Probably not initially anyway, because not all of them, I wouldn't think, would get approved. I mean, all loans don't get approved. Take it from a guy who knows. I've been in the investment business for 30 years. So, you know, they don't all get approved. So, you know, initially, I don't see a big expenditure there. But from a PR perspective, in terms of the community, and them seeing that we are involved with this, or the EDC is kind of behind it and kind of moving and supporting the loan fund, I think is a good thing. Again, depending on how it's handled. But in my opinion, the two priorities should be
Childcare and housing.
yeah, childcare and housing.
So to sum up your comments, 2. Okay, Todd, Todd is not here. I think, based on my discussions with him and his comments priorly, he would be in favor of 3: childcare, housing, and marketing. I think that those are the 3 that he would advocate for doing 3.
I have a quick,
I'm sorry. Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
Mary.
yeah.
Yes, now you can go ahead.
well, I mean, I think, I just wanted to ask a question that'll maybe throw a wrench in the works, but what about, thinking about what Michael was saying, what about expanding revitalizing downtown to just say revitalizing downtown?
Right.
Instead of revitalizing the physical downtown, so that subcommittee could have a broader.
Right. So we are not unanimous on the EDC, nor is the community unanimous. However, there is a very strong feeling among the most number of comments we got during our annual meeting was that the EDC should not be giving 1 penny to businesses.
Interesting,
Period, full stop.
interesting.
Not what, John?
The EDC should not be giving taxpayer money to businesses, period, full stop. Now, that was not a majority opinion. Michael has argued the opposite consistently. I happen to agree. There should not be no policies on the EDC that are period, full stop. I can think of many examples of giving money to businesses which are not appropriate, and we turn some of those down. I can absolutely think of examples where we would loan money to business, and in some cases give money to businesses that would be perfectly appropriate. So I don't think we should rule it out. The reason why I consistently focus it on physical is because I believe that if it is focused broadly, we will end up with the merchants in town, in the downtown area specifically, saying, the purpose of we're paying the tax, we should get all the money. The first is untrue, the second is unwise. Not that we shouldn't be supporting the merchants and the merchants in downtown. So my view is that one path towards supporting local businesses that kind of doesn't please anyone is a loan fund. The loan fund.
Can I butt in real quick? I'm sorry. There might be others. I have to put children to bed. I'm just interested to see how I can help with this childcare subcommittee. Is there any information we have or something that I can look forward to or hear about to get involved with that? And I feel like there might be some others here that are too.
Yes, there's a childcare working group that has just been launched. The chair, unfortunately, isn't at tonight's meeting, but there are other people here where they have held one public meeting to which the public was invited. I believe 2 people attended. They are planning more meetings to solicit help and to solicit ideas and input from the community. And does anyone briefly want to, who's on the committee, just briefly mention that? And then Stephanie, that's how we're seeking involvement and information and input from the community. So Joe, did you want to say something briefly though? Because
Who are you asking me?
yeah, were you raising your hand?
Yeah, we proposed one meeting and I personally, I was a little disappointed because we invited not only the public, but
Well, how did you invite people? I didn't hear about this until recently.
It was on a listserv, and I believe more than once, and I believe that did Todd put something in the paper, I think?
I don't have the paper and I didn't do the listserv. I think it might be helpful to send it out to.
Yeah. Well, there was, and we're gonna do it again, and I think, Mika, what is this, Monday that we're scheduled to have the meeting?
All right. Joe, let me just interrupt for 1 second.
Stephanie, I just put my email address in the chat. If
Great,
you'd like
thank
to email me, I'd be happy
Yeah.
to
Also-
to connect you with the
Good
whole
job.
group.
Yeah, great,
Good
thank you.
job.
And
Mika, that's great.
the other thing I'd like to mention is 6:30 is an absolutely terrible time for families to try and join. So this is also a hindrance for us. Like, I need to put my children down, it's past their bedtime. So I think that's another reason why a lot of people aren't going to be able to be involved or try to chime in on these things, because this is not a time for families.
Appreciate that. We've had many different discussions about times, and they all disrupt different segments. So I'm not saying that what you're saying is false, but it's a challenge. We've changed the time and we're testing it with which times have the greatest attendance. 6:30 does not have as good an attendance as 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock may not be good, but we've had to propose. We will continue to discuss it, and the times of the childcare meeting could certainly be at different times than this. Appreciate it.
No,
I
it's
would,
typically during the day.
yeah, I would encourage you, Stephanie, to get a subscription to the listserv. There's really no other easy way to communicate to the community.
I'm gonna make a suggestion.
I have recently,
websites.
and I haven't seen anything about this on there. I found out from a chat group. So I've been on for about 3 weeks or so, and I haven't seen anything. So that's unfortunate, but thank you guys. I have to run off. I will email you your email address. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
I think the easy way to do that is we're having meetings, we should put it on the EDC website.
We absolutely can. Nobody comes to the EDC website, but we can put it there.
But if at least it's there, people who aren't.
People know.
People who were looking for
They
it.
need to know how to, I agree. There's, yeah,
Easy
agree.
solution.
All right,
So John, wait a minute, I have one more comment. John?
well, Joe, I think a comment on which, because I want to get back to this.
On exactly those five categories. I mean, I think I want to push back a little bit on what you said that I support two. I don't support two. I literally, I guess I did a bad job of making a point. I support all five. I think it's a question of management, of where you start with what and where the initial focus is, not disregarding any of them actually in their importance in a sequence of time, but I don't support just two. I
Okay,
think it's a question of management, not just supporting.
fair enough. And I did,
Well, I think it comes down.
well, hold on a second, Patrick, hold on. Deborah and then Marion, I'm going to give you a chance to say
good.
what you would like, to tell us which
Okay,
one. you would
okay,
like.
yeah.
Deborah? And then Patrick after that.
I just want to kind of remind us all that the exercise was trying to consolidate, and that the thing that we were all very happy about a couple weeks back was like, we're looking to consolidate. And while this is more directed and makes more sense as far as like, okay, we know who's doing what, we're not consolidating yet. And that's my opinion. I'm probably of the mindset of like, again, picking three and with like a subcategory of a fourth or something like that. Like, but I'd like to see a consolidation.
Okay, Marion and then Patrick. Do you want to say which one or ones you would favor?
Yeah,
By the way, I'm not saying this forever. I'm saying for the time, like for just a year or two, like make a choice for a year or two.
Okay.
I don't feel like I have anything to add. I could talk to hear myself talk.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna say one thing is, I think it's good. The consolidation is gonna happen when people present proposals. The people who get together and put together big proposals first. I mean, and not that, anything's more important than the other in a sense, but we're gonna see proposals, and I think that's gonna consolidate how we do it. And not that we take anything off the table, but I think the proposals will come, and that will be the consolidation.
All right, so here's what I would like to suggest. Given what several people said, including Patrick, your last comment, and this relates to a number of people throughout. Let me just explain mechanically, and to answer your question, Larry, and get to these comments. Mechanically, there are 3 groups that are actively operating: childcare, housing, and marketing. I don't think anyone wants to I think the majority of EDC members would vote to keep all 3 of those in existence. Those are priorities for Woodstock, most of us believe, and we have dedicated people that are already working and achieving results, or at least beginning to. There is a 4th group that is ready to start up, which is physical revitalization of downtown. It has 5 or 6 people on it. Joe is a member of it. Stuart Matthews, who's a community member, is prepared to lead it. He has a couple of other folks that Joe had recruited that are some merchants from downtown, and a couple of other people that are involved in housing development and so forth downtown. It's a good group. They have, Larry, to your question, they have some ideas about initiatives to help revitalize public spaces physically, of which there are some evident examples of buildings that are, in the case that one we're in, falling down, and also private buildings, of which there are several notorious examples of buildings that don't kind of contribute to the most beautiful town in America moniker that we've earned. And then there is events, which is something that we've tried to create in the past, but we don't really have a group. We had a couple of people, Michael and Deborah, working on to support Bookstock this past year, but we don't really have a group there. What I would suggest is that hearing how people are describing this, I would suggest that since representatives of the first 3 working groups are here and are receiving, for the most part, very strong support, they should just continue. Stuart and other than Joe, I don't think there's any other members of the downtown revitalization working group here. I suggest we simply tell them this was the discussion. If you want to continue with your working group, by all means, go ahead. None of us think downtown revitalization is unimportant. A number of people may have a bias. If they're forced to choose between that and childcare or housing, probably will pick childcare and housing. If you want to go ahead and put, and work on this priority, particularly if you're planning a couple of years out, that would be encouraged. We think that that's economic development. We think that would be a service to the community. I think they'll decide to go ahead and try to put some proposals together, maybe sooner than we expect, and who knows. And with respect to events, I would suggest that until we have people come forward who want to create a working group, several on the EDC and then recruit a group from outside the EDC, that we basically say we're open to that group approaching us, but right now we're going to focus on 4 things and we'll leave it to EDC members who feel strongly about events to go and create that working group and so forth. And so that was what I would suggest with respect to working groups. That is not precisely what everyone said, but it's, and then I happen to agree with Patrick's point that I didn't think the purpose of this was to narrow down. I think the purpose was to decide what to focus on, and some people wanted to narrow down. Although that does technically, I suppose, narrow it down by 1. So, but I do agree that the narrowing down will occur when the proposals come before us. So I'd like to move that we establish those 4 working groups, give them the message, give the 4th one the message. They can decide whether to proceed. I think they will, and then hold open for an application for an events committee if anyone wants to do that. So I'll make that motion.
Second.
Someone second? All right, Marion seconded. A discussion about this. Deborah.
Sorry, I kept having trouble finding the hand up, hand down. Having been on this working group, it's not that we're not interested in doing an events working group. It's that we need to have people come to us, because that's one of the things that we had talked about, that it's not us that are doing the events. And so I think it's not actually a working group. We're not actually trying to figure out new events or trying to figure out how to help somebody create their event better, because that feels like we're getting involved in a way that maybe we're not always welcome. That it's more about, we're here. If there are people who want to do events, then, talk to us. But I don't think it's an active working group. Michael, am I saying what we talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. We're not putting on the events, and we're not in the business necessarily of changing events. But
Right.
it's a function of, do people know there is an events subcommittee in the EDC that they can come to say, I have this idea for an event, or our event needs some help.
Right.
That's kind of where.
So it's
Well,
not
I'm
active unless people come to us. It's not,
Well-
it's a little different than the other ones. Yeah.
Well, but I would say that, okay, well, if the two of you, okay, well, why don't we take this discussion offline then? I didn't realize that the two of you were still committed to that, which is great. And let's just take offline what it would take. I mean, I do think that the committee, first of all, should, just in principle, since all the others should bring in some non-EDC members just to split the load and to create input. And then secondly, I think that group should talk about how to get the message out of what you and Michael just said. So that there's a prospect of something happening, which may not take a lot of effort, but would take some. So
And probably should have the Chamber of Commerce involved as well as part of that group. Since they do a lot of events, and that would be a good spot.
yeah. Well, so let's, Michael and Deborah, can we talk offline about continuing that and expanding it? That's okay. All right. Are there any other comments about the motion, about my suggestion, which again isn't precisely what anyone said, but is sort of down, I'm hoping it's people feel it's down the middle.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Okay.
I didn't say it.
All right, then all in favor of 4 with the application for 5, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, then we don't, so it's unanimous, so we don't have to take a roll call vote. All right. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to take 15 more minutes on this broad topic, and I want to come back for a minute to the loan fund and then we're going to turn to marketing for 45 minutes and housing for 10 minutes. I'm sorry, Trina, to go last, but we've got a lot to talk about.
No worries.
Let's focus on the community fund. Let's just see if we can reach agreement on the community fund. I think no one spoke, is this correct? No one spoke against the community fund. And a number of people spoke in favor of it. Is that correct? Can I
Yes, I think that.
can I just check with Pete? Is anyone opposed to us establishing? I think what we talked about was, when we did our survey 3 months ago, we talked about somewhere between around 10% or 10 to 15%, which would be $30,000 to $40,000 allocated to a fund that was in any area that supports economic and community development. So it would include the 5 priorities, or the 4/5 priorities, but it could also include other areas. And is there anyone who's opposed, before we say how we're going to do it, assuming that we do it in a way you're comfortable with, which is what we have to discuss, is there anyone opposed to having that fund, to allocating those funds and to making those kinds of grants? Okay, I think that's consistent with our past discussions. I think the main question is how much involvement should we have? And maybe the easiest thing to do, see if you're all comfortable with this, is, are there 3 of you who would like to volunteer to answer this question offline and come back to us next month? Basically to say, I think there are 2 objectives that are somewhat competing, but my guess is we can thread the needle. One is, we don't want it to distract us from focusing on building big proposals in our, for sure, 3 biggest areas: marketing, expanding childcare, expanding housing, and possibly the other 2 areas as well. We don't want it to take us away from that. We want to do fewer big things. On the other hand, it's our obligation. We can't simply divorce ourselves completely from it. So what would be the way we would operate a community fund that could achieve both of those competing objectives? What's the thin line that would allow us to do it? I'm not asking for a question. I'm saying from a process point. Are there 3 people who would be interested in coming up with a proposal that meets those objectives over the next month? Was that you? We volunteer for that? You want to make it?
No, I want to make a comment.
Okay,
I don't think you need 3 people. I think 2 max, maybe
Okay.
1. I think the idea is we have someone who helps lead a community group, because I think if we're committing 2 or 3 more of us to this, I know.
No. It's just a one-time meeting to come
To design-
back with a proposal.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying, are there 3 of you who want to rather than us brainstorm with
Yeah, yeah.
9 people,
Gotcha.
are there 3 people who want to brainstorm?
And come back.
Larry, are you raising your hand?
No, I wanted to make a comment. Can I do that?
You can, I just want to clarify, without raising your hand?
I'm, yeah, no,
You're
I'm
not
not.
volunteering. All right, fine. I
I'm
just
not
thought I could twist
volunteering.
your arm. Go ahead.
I didn't find the amount of work we had to do to be enough to distract us from also the big projects. I feel like this community fund is really one of the essential things that the EDC does. I don't think it's asking us too much as a committee to go through that process again. And I don't see delegating it off being a good idea.
And that process, you mean the annual meeting process?
Like we've done in the past,
And the process exists.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, so it's really just the people to manage it as we go.
Michael?
So, yeah, I mean, I'm willing to help with this one, but I feel like we should just do it like we used to do it, where it's a monthly thing. So if we've got a limited amount of money, we start at January or whatever you want to do, fiscal year, and then as soon as that money's done, we're done taking community grants. And we just do it every month. If we get an application, great, we review it. If we don't, we don't. I don't think we need to do it every 6 months. I think these are the things that might be more spur of the moment type of issues. That's why I think we should do it every month, like we used to.
Okay, so there's 3 proposals on the table, basically. One is some kind of implicit separate community fund. One is the annual meeting, as we've done in the past, and one is the every month, which is sort of also what we did loosely in the past. Okay, that's a pretty good set of options. Is there anyone who has another option? Deborah, are you raising your hand?
Well, I just wanted some clarity with what Larry said. I don't feel like we're pawning it off. It's still, and I want to be clear that that's not what I would like to support, that it's pawned off. It's that we're bringing in some community members to create the committee with 1 or 2 EDC members to kind of spearhead it. Is that correct? Or am I getting it wrong?
Well, we haven't defined who would run the community fund, but certainly for option A, B, and C. A would be, in effect, to create a group with more non-EDC, I'll make this up, more non-EDC members on it than EDC members, maybe 1 EDC member or 2, someone who has bandwidth so that it wouldn't take them away from working in some of the working groups. And that group would distribute
What you're describing is a working group.
Correct. It's basically a working group.
Yeah,
Correct.
it would be, I mean,
It's a 6th working group.
we would, as a committee though, we would determine a certain amount. This is how much we fund the community fund and the people on the community, and we would give certain criteria and then
they would do it, but it would not come back to vote to
Exactly.
us. It would be for them. And so they would have to hold public meetings. So that's option A. Option B is the annual meeting approach, which we just did this past year. And option C is the prior to the annual meeting approach, which Michael proposed, which is what we used to do in the past, roughly speaking. And Michael's approach does, I think, Michael, you suggested, I don't want to put words in your mouth, because it comes every month, it's not like a heavy lift. It's a frequent lift, but it's not a heavy lift. Is that sort of what your idea was?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think we're going to get like 50 applications in 1 month's time. So I feel like if we leave it to just the 9 members of the EDC to discuss and vote, it's pretty quick and it's pretty simple.
Okay. All right. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd be happy with what Michael's saying. What I really don't think is appropriate is to create a committee that makes decisions that I think are appropriate for the EDC to make. I don't think we should be delegating our responsibility to another committee. That's my
Exactly.
point.
Okay, good. Other comments?
I would agree with
Patrick?
that. I would agree with that. I think we need to be the ones approving whatever money goes out.
Okay, Marion?
I just would remind us, I think it was a meeting 2 or 3 months ago where we spent the first 45 minutes of the meeting talking about a $500 grant. And couldn't get any of our other work done. And so we might want to limit it to at least once a year, twice a year, or something like that, because it did end up in reality taking up a lot of our time.
Yeah.
Good point.
I'm trying to think of a process to resolve this in less than 7 minutes.
Is it, John,
Yep.
is it possible, as a suggestion, that the committee itself kind of vet the applications? Or, no, maybe that's not a good idea.
You mean a
What
pre-vetting?
I'm thinking about is, if you come up with 2 or 3, or even maybe 1 or 2 who apply, the committee itself vets it and makes the presentation to the full board or the full commission, the merits of this application, with the applicant there to answer any questions. It might help expedite things a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm thinking something like that. Maybe.
Yeah. The challenge is if we don't bypass the EDC, I think then the select board has to get involved. I think there have to be 2 layers. I'm not sure that we are allowed.
They'd have to get involved anyway, wouldn't it, John?
It's not clear. They might, in which case
Yeah,
having
I mean,
an independent group would be the height of bureaucracy. So
However, it's determined that application or 2 applications are approved, everything has to go before the selectmen in terms of money.
well, not really, because so for example, in the housing group, we're not planning to bring it in front of the select board. Now, I am going to check that. At the end of this meeting, we have a housing working group that has a set of specific criteria that's been approved by the select board. We're treating them as a grantee, and the select board has already allocated the funds for that.
That's just my point. They have to allocate all funds.
Correct. Right.
All
But,
funds.
Yeah.
And then
No, but
unless you might suggest that the select board beforehand allocates $30,000 or $40,000 for the EDC to disperse in community funding,
that's precisely
and let the EDC do what it wants with it.
That's precisely what I would be suggesting for Plan A. But I think that there's more people have spoken against the idea of delegating that responsibility from the full EDC than have spoken for it. In fact, I think I'm the only one that's spoken for it. Well, maybe.
I think that's the way to go.
Well, all right. I'm gonna let's ponder this. Let's think this through again. Maybe we can have some offline discussions among different people. I'd ask the EDC folks to think about this. I do want to bring up one challenge that can be with the full EDC reviewing things, whether we do it once a year or we do it, as Michael suggested, on a sort of a rolling basis. When we did it the way Michael described, on a rolling basis, there was a subcommittee that didn't vet the proposals, but helped the applicants comply. With due respect, it's a great community. This made up of great people. I can't remember one applicant who complied. The applications were incomplete. We ended up having discussions without the information that we needed.
Yeah.
It
I remember that, John, and it was a good concept, but
Right.
like communism, it just didn't work.
So I think to explore Michael's, going back to that, the annual meeting, because we made it more heavy lifting, we spent 20 minutes, which wasn't even enough, but we spent 20 minutes with each applicant. There was, a lot of compiling data and so forth. If we did it the way Michael wanted, which is possible, we may need to have an administrative person for part of the year on a monthly basis, on a very part-time basis, to work with applicants. Because to work with applicants and not submit to the EDC, they don't have to evaluate that it's a good application. They simply have to evaluate that it's a complete application. And if we had someone to do that, then I think it could be a good use of the committee's time. Absent that, I worry about it. So let's just table this now, if that's all right. And we'll also table the loan fund. At the next meeting, we'll talk about the community fund and the loan fund. And I'll try to work, if any of you have specific ideas for how you might implement and address some of these concerns, let me know. I'll pull those together and we'll talk about it at the next meeting. But we've made some progress here. We've got either 4 or 5 working groups, depending on our discussion with Michael and Deborah. Let's assume 5. And those are the things we want: big proposals. And And so we'll say that those are our five priorities. Although some of those, I think it's the sense of the group that the first three, marketing, expanding childcare, expanding housing, not necessarily in that order, that those three are clearly the most important. The other two might be deferred, might be less important, are still important. We might still fund them. We want to have working groups.
It's going to depend on the pros,
But it's going to depend, and in all of them, it'll depend on the proposals. So we're okay with all of that. I think that's what the motion was in effect.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Good. No, look, we're making progress. This is, I think it's important that we say what our priorities are. Okay. Marketing update and housing update. So we've got 45 minutes. We will finish on time at 8:30. Sorry, something, I'm sorry. I did not, well, I think we're gonna, I'm gonna move ahead.
You want to do the housing one first and then do the, or it doesn't matter.
Let's do marketing. It's on the agenda and Charles is here, so.
Cool.
I'm gonna give a brief update, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Patrick and to Charles Kahn, who are, Patrick is the chair with Beth of the marketing working group, and Charles Kahn is the partner, co-founder, I think, and partner of Class 4, the firm that's been, we've retained last August and has been helping us. The project that we approved in August of 2022 was a one-year project. It was designed to enable Woodstock to significantly improve our market. It's now nearing its conclusion. It was budgeted to run through the end of August. The funds will actually last through mid-September, so we're kind of right on track. We have a little bit left over. Not left over, we can continue the program for another 2 weeks. The performance improvement, which we're going to show you in a minute, and then which Charles is going to explain in more detail, has been extraordinary. The project was approved off-cycle, which led to long discussions last August. If you remember, we decided not to wait until what would have been March of this year. And so we now need to decide how to proceed, since the program will end in mid-February. And there's some, I think, strong arguments for continuing it in some fashion, although it's not absolutely necessary that we can continue it. We can still, there is an option to stop the project. I'm not in favor of it, but we'll share that option with you. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and summarize these points and then turn it over to the marketing group to go into detail and to ask some questions, answer some questions. The project was designed to enable Woodstock to significantly improve our marketing approach on 2 dimensions. The first dimension was to have a much larger audience for our marketing. The more people, all other things being equal, the more people we're able to reach, the more impact we can have. And the second dimension was much more effective communication with those people. And the way we can be more effective is to know more about them and to tailor our communications to them. So today, what we know about the people, by today, I mean in the past, I should say that the past 5 years, what we know about the people we communicate with and market to is their email address, period, full stop. In the platform that we've now built and will use in the future and have been using since June 1st, is that since the first week, June 6th, we know their email, which is the same, but we also know their name. We know where they live. We know what their interests are, and we know what they're buying. We know something about their buying behavior. So you can imagine that trying to market Woodstock to someone on the new platform is a whole lot easier to say something that's compelling to them than it is marketing with our old approach. And we now have, we've started using, we spent from August until June 6th building this platform. On June 6th, we launched the platform in a test mode. We now have enough data to indicate the progress that we've made on the vertical axis and to some modest extent on the horizontal axis, much larger audience. Some indications about effectiveness as well, both very positive. But let me just share with you first the vertical axis. So the measure that we're using at this stage of the process is leads captured. These are people that are entering into our database who have some interest in Woodstock. In the first 5 years in which we did marketing, up through June 6th, we gathered a little over 3,000 people. 3,000 people who are on our list that we send emails to or sent emails to, and That's all we knew about them, so we sent them email. In the 7.5 weeks since we launched the platform, we've got almost 4,000 additional leads, additional. So if you sort of annualize that, in the first 5 years, we were picking up about 600 or 625 people per year. In the last 2 months, a little bit less than 2 months, we're now operating at getting between 23 and 24,000 people a year. It's about 40 times the performance. And we're not just capturing those leads. Okay, thanks, Mika. We're not just capturing those leads, our effectiveness at communicating them as measured just at a very high level with terms of open rates and click-through rates are double what the industry average is. So if you go back and say what this program was supposed to do was to get us a much larger audience, we're only 7.5 weeks into it. We've more than doubled our audience. So we're clearly achieving that objective.
And not only improving and getting more of the audience, but also knowing enough about them to actually be able to market them in a smarter way.
Right, and that marketing in a smarter way is mostly in the future, because it doesn't happen overnight. The first thing that happens is you start to gather leads. We were told this was going to happen. I don't think any of us, I don't know, Charles, what you expected, but you don't have to answer, but I certainly, if it had been a 5-fold increase, I would have thought that was fantastic. A 40-fold increase was, is pretty amazing. We're going to come back to this slide because now we're going to let Patrick and Charles explain the platform in more detail and answer your questions about it. But after that, we're going to come back and put this slide back up. There are 3 options for us to proceed. The first option is to stop on September 15th. If you go, that means our budget would run out. We would not we would not get any additional funding. And the next step, if you look at the bottom there, would be a 3-year proposal from the marketing working group. I'm saying a 3-year proposal, it might be a 2-year or 4-year proposal, but a 5-year proposal, a multi-year proposal for a consistent marketing campaign that doesn't require us to come back to the EDC every 6 months or 3 months to get more funding, using the platform that has been built. And remember now that having built the platform, the costs of the program going forward would be using it as opposed to rebuilding it, but we don't have to rebuild it once it's built.
And continuing to improve and add to it.
Yeah, but yeah, sorry, I'm not suggesting that there would be no development work, but it would be more of an emphasis on actually marketing as opposed to building.
Right.
Even if we stop the program in September 15th, in 6 weeks, we'll still come back with that proposal. We think that that the data that we have is pretty compelling. The second proposal we can consider is going through the fall season. The fall season is the biggest season. If we were to finish out September and continue marketing on the platform from October and November, we would get 2 things. We would build the scripts and the content for fall season marketing for future years as well, use it again next year. And we would get probably, we think, a higher hit rate from that investment than we've gotten even so far because of the great interest during that season in Woodstock anyway. And that would be requiring an additional $21,000 of funding now to extend it. Or we could continue without, and then the group would come back. I'm saying through February because the assumption that we have an annual meeting again in March, at which point in time, we would consider their big proposal as well as big proposals from other working groups. And then we could simply continue at the full speed ahead and allocate an additional 5 months today. The rationale for doing that is we wouldn't incur any startup costs, which are modest but non-zero. There'd be some startup costs if we stop on option 1 and 2. And the other benefit is that we would get, we would have another 20 or 30,000 people. I can't do another 32,000. So, another 10,000 leads or 12,000 leads coming from that. But it would cost us 45,000.
And we build out the full set of scripts.
Right, and we'd have a 4-season set of content.
Sorry, can you just clarify that the numbers in the columns under continue and fall season, those are numbers of emails you anticipate?
No, that's dollars. These are dollars requested of the EDC.
Okay, thank you.
Because we've run out of funds in 6 weeks.
Got it.
So do we allocate nothing to this program? Which doesn't mean it's not the end of the world, it's just the end of this phase. And then we start up again when we approve, hopefully, the multi-year program. You know, there's arguments. The argument for that is we don't spend any extra money. That's really the only argument for that.
But we lose, but we
would lose, right.
we lose the information we gain through the foliage and Christmas season.
Right, exactly. And then you obviously gain, you pay for and gain the obvious.
And the thing to remember about that, when losing that information, we have to wait another year to get there.
Right.
Right. So we're going to come back to this, but what we're now going to do is give a presentation of the platform so you understand it in more detail, give a chance to answer questions about the platform. And then when you have a full understanding of that, we'll come back to this page and we will entertain motions to do ideally one of these three things. I'd rather not have 9 proposals, but we'll entertain proposals for whether and how to continue to fund this. Okay.
So do you want to do the video first?
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the video is not queued up. So just if you want to make some, it's in my email. The link is in my email.
Yep.
All right. So I apologize. Sorry about this. I
Chat
didn't.
among ourselves.
Yeah. Right. Does anyone know how to vamp? Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean sharing?
You need to sit up here so they can see them.
Oh, yeah, of course. No, I'm sorry. So Charles, sorry, I should introduce Charles Kahn. You may have been at an EDC meeting once before.
Plenty.
Yeah, all right. So I can't tell.
It would have been coming from me.
Yes, but I have a lot of emails. Oh, here it is. Okay.
I'm usually pretty good at putting what it is in the title.
Yeah, well, no, it
Should be a link.
Sorry, I really apologize. Can one of you resend it to me?
I'm gonna look for it right now.
John, I can forward it to you from Dale.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I hate wasting people's time like this.
Send it to your Gmail.
Yeah, Jonathan.spector@gmail.com.
Should be from Dale.
Okay, yeah. Well, this is the same email. Or maybe it's something at the bottom. Okay, got it. Yeah. Or maybe it was there. All right, let me. Okay,
Share your screen.
yeah, I'm gonna share my screen. Hold on. Okay.
In response to Woodstock EDC's creative marketing request, we've developed an activation e-commerce hybrid strategy where user data is captured
Excuse me.
and targeted with direct marketing.
Can you guys hear the audio on that?
Yeah.
No, can folks who are remote hear the audio?
We can hear the
Kind of,
audio,
but-
but it's kind of small.
Yeah, could you make it bigger?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Joe, you got to mute yourself.
Yeah, I think I think the audio is actually playing on my computer.
Take one of the mics and put it.
Yeah, well, there's a mic right here, so
John, if you just go to the lower right hand corner, there's a full screen
lower here, here,
to the right.
there. Up.
Oh, I can't. Left. Right in the middle. Yeah, middle up. Right. There you go. Right over there.
No.
I'm looking a little more to the right. You know those 4 dots?
Oh, all the way over here.
Yeah, it's not tracked.
Yeah, hold on. This is just, there it is. There you go.
That's better.
In response to Woodstock EDC's creative marketing request, we've developed an activation e-commerce hybrid strategy where user data is captured through digital tools and targeted with direct marketing platforms. This way, we can talk to your audience 24/7, 7 days a week, right in their phone or personal computer. And unlike traditional place marketing, this approach captures data at the top of the funnel, which is incredibly important because it allows us to track and communicate from day one. Whether or not the lead decides to visit in that specific month, we'll be able to incentivize them immediately and continue this retargeting until eventually they convert, even if that's a whole year later. It's natural that some of Woodstock's digital audience will opt out of our direct communication, which is why the whole process starts with an audience capture framework that works 24 hours a day, generating leads at a significantly higher ratio than even the highest levels of opt-outs. Here's a top-level view of how the Woodstock digital strategy will function under Class 4. Stunning, experience-based content is pushed to a custom audience, which will build through Facebook's Ad Manager platform. This is the largest publicly available profile repository on the planet, essentially a shopping cart for a 2B audience, allowing us to pick and pluck variables like age, demographics, location, and interest. The quality of content is important here because these ads must attract and convert a user in a matter of seconds, and the digital advertising marketplace is increasingly competitive. In high traffic tourist season, messaging will be paired with interest-based ads that offer an additional incentive. For example, weekly giveaways for village lodging and food. Once a prospect clicks through our ads, they'll be directed to an improved Visit Woodstock homepage that is set up to better serve the information travel-minded consumers are looking for. So, as part of a year 2 objective, individual landing pages can be built. So, for example, the outdoor interest audience points to a page geared toward mountain biking, hiking, and outdoor adventures, while the family audience sees shopping and events at Billings Farm. For now, the prospect lands on the home page and is presented with a lead magnet that further reinforces the giveaway incentive. This is the point at which we capture audience data for direct marketing. In exchange for giveaway entry, we'll collect key demographics like name, age, location, email, and interests. This data is stored in segments, which allow us to organize and sort profiles at a detailed level and provide high-level trends for audience interest. In phase 3 of Class 4's proposal, we expect to collect over 10% of all web traffic as fully captured leads, which will feed Woodstock's retargeting campaigns for years to come. If a prospect visits the website and does not fill in the lead magnet or navigates away, they'll be captured through Facebook's Pixel, which is installed on the site. This places the user in a retargeting flow that pushes relevant content on a weekly level until the prospect returns again to Woodstock's website, and this time ideally converts. We'll know at a minute-by-minute level which ad sets are working and which ones are not, and we'll have enough content to swap these out and A/B test in real time. As soon as a lead is converted through the lead magnet, they'll be entered into an automated direct marketing flow, which sends a welcome email containing direct marketing video content as outlined in our proposal. The lead will also receive a second automated email 2 weeks later with further incentive to visit Woodstock and hero content. Based on qualification data captured back on the site, certain users will additionally enter a twice-a-year lifestyle series, which incorporates general Woodstock messaging, hero content, and a range of real estate listings from participating local brokers. These links will be tracked to gauge intent and accuracy within the segment. Hand-built direct emails will activate each segment on a monthly basis. So, for example, in June, the Cultural plus Music Interest segment might receive targeted information about performances and recommendations for places to stay and eat. These emails incorporate events-based direct marketing content to be produced throughout 2021 and the 22 calendar year. By treating a visit to Woodstock the same way we would look at a digital product purchase, our approach is not only unique in the place marketing landscape, but also highly effective, and by nature, entirely data-driven from the ground up. To this effect, the EDC will be provided with a real-time tracking dashboard that collates web data from Google Analytics, pay-per-click, campaign services, direct marketing, lead magnets, and social media. We are also uniquely positioned to service the needs outlined in the EDC's RFP from a proximity and existing engagement perspective. Class 4 holds a hands-on understanding of Woodstock's economic ecosystem, along with many first-name relationships to the town's merchants and business leadership. We not only understand what makes Woodstock special, but hold the results-backed toolset to communicate that across the Upper East Coast. And I personally hold a vested interest in the sustainability and growth of Woodstock Village. At 27, I've traveled more across the world than most people will in a lifetime, and I have yet to find a community as vibrant, welcoming, and picturesque. For me, this project is more than a contract, and you'll see that reflected as we build one of the most effective data-powered municipal marketing programs in the state. Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Okay, we haven't lost the meeting, right?
Yeah, what we're gonna do is John's gonna bring up the dashboard that you saw at the end of that video, and Charles is gonna take us through that.
Where's the URL?
It's right here. class4.co/WEC-access.
Sorry, guys, I did not have time to do this in advance.
My email address. That's like what's up.
Yeah,
Let me just get started.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Right, so I think you all can see me, I'm assuming, through the camera in front of me. So I'm Charles. You just heard me speak a little bit in that video. That was a piece of content we developed for the initial pitch with Patrick's team. And tonight, I really want to share some more information in regard to the program, what was developed and how the performance has affected various aspects of what we're planning to continue with and some of those options on the table. Some background on me, I'm a partner at Class 4. I spent the last 6 years of my life helping brands connect their content and products to new audiences. I've spent a number of years in the content space and most recently working in the full service end of things on strategic development, your traditional digital advertising you'd see pretty much anywhere, and analysis, where we connect the work we do to data and are able to build some of the resources you're looking at tonight. As I said in that video, my interest here is really a long-term success for Woodstock. I've lived here for 27 years. My business is based in Burlington, but my hope is long-term we can continue to support Woodstock and we can see growth in many of the areas I know those on the call will acknowledge need some attention. We developed this program initially to give Woodstock the most cutting-edge digital marketing program here in the state of Vermont. I think we've succeeded. I know we've succeeded, in fact. I would say it's probably one of the most advanced programs in New England. And it's really made up of sort of 4 key components. One of those is strategy, content, execution, and then reporting, which John has right here. Tonight, what I love to do is explain a little bit of that performance, talk about what it actually means, because at the end of the day, right, these are just graphs, but also give you folks an opportunity to ask questions, because I think marketing is a broad term. And when we talk about marketing and just based on things I've read, the listserv comments that have been made around town, I want to make sure we all understand what we're talking about specifically within marketing in this program. So to start out with, what you're looking at here on your screen is a representation of the dashboard in the video. John, if I just pop over here, let's just swap. Yep, might make things a little bit easy. Certainly. A lot easier. So the purpose of this dashboard is to collate all of the various channels we're talking about that were described in that video into one place. And when we can collate that information in one resource, we can more effectively see what's working and what's not. The program from its inception was never designed to bring people to Woodstock this summer immediately. We're operating under an economic condition right now. There's a lot of travel. I think if you spoke to any merchant, I know I certainly have, you'd hear that things are going well. But as economic conditions shift, just like they shift in the e-commerce space, we're sort of in this challenged position of how do we bring people to Woodstock? And so as we go through this, what we're really talking about is how does this future-proof our marketing plan for the future? How does this future-proof Woodstock for the future? What happens when people aren't traveling and those prospects aren't just coming here of their own accord? How can we talk to those prospects, activate them, bring them here for the lowest possible cost per acquisition? And that doesn't happen overnight. And so what you're looking at right here on this page is essentially a representation of the owned audience performance in this program. So that's who we've captured, the leads, the emails, the profiles that John mentioned. Now, one of the functions of this dashboard is it allows the marketing team to benchmark all of the data captured in sort of these charts. And so what we can see is how we performed this year, how we performed in past periods. And I'm just going to compare this to the past period here. And also what's working and what's not. And so when we talk about social channels, when we talk about organic traffic, what we're trying to figure out is how is this organic piece of content working in relation to what we're spending to work? And then what's the actual throughput of those things? So right here, this is goal completion. And this is kind of the primary key performance indicator that we're using. We're looking at how many people intentionally opt in to our email list. And it's not just emails, it's the qualification of those prospects. We're not just capturing people, we're capturing an audience that feasibly will come to Woodstock at one point or another. And so we can chart that based on key events. You'll see at 4th of July, for example, we see a much higher throughput in that forum. And so in the future, we're able to plan more effectively. What kind of digital advertising can we do around the 4th of July? Not necessarily to bring people to Woodstock, but to capture them on our lead list so we can bring them here in the off season when the economy isn't flooded and when restaurants aren't booking out 2 weeks. And that's kind of a theme when we go through this to be thinking about. The way we're capturing those leads is through 2 key incentives. One of those is a $100 gift card that works only at Woodstock businesses. And the second is a one-night stay at the Woodstock Inn, which is another client of ours at Class 4 and has generously donated 10 nights to support this project over the summer. So you can kind of see the tracking and throughput here. We're not going to go into the details. I've been advised to keep this as surface level as possible. So I'm just
Charles, just to understand, he can get so deep in the weeds with this stuff that we'll all be glazed eyes.
Right. What we're looking at, though, is I'm just going to touch on a few points. Really, the top performing interest groups on the website. So where are our prospects actually coming? What are they interested in? Are they looking at the events calendar, or are they looking at a specific resource within those pages? And then regionally, what the performance looks like from a super top level by state. Of course, we can drill down in more details by county and actually by several factors, including top 5–10% of income earners. How much money are they making? What are they interested in? What do they typically buy? And are these the people we want to bring to Woodstock? So again, it's a long-term outcome. I'm going to touch very briefly on this, and then we're just going to move past, because I think that to effectively explain to all of you how this functions would take a little bit more time. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those. I'm around town fairly frequently. But essentially what we've done is use the data captured in the first part of this program, really the strategic development phase here, to build a model that projects economic growth with a very high degree of accuracy as a result of the leads captured. To do this, we used industry trends and benchmarks nationally, and then built a model that calculates throughput on our lead magnet. And then we took all of those numbers for the most conservative national benchmarks and we cut them in half. So everything you're looking at here is half the national average benchmark, and additionally represents only one lead fill. Meaning if a family of 4, right, you have let's say the father, right, goes onto the website, fills out the lead magnet, we're essentially attributing that to one person, not 4. And so the economic impact is far greater than the $600 a night, which is what's currently represented here.
So the bottom line is we're being hyper conservative.
Yeah, it's a step above just sort of a conservative number here. So this is to date the economic impact of the program according to half national benchmarks for both a one-day conservative and liberal estimate. And then here in a 2-day, in terms of 2 days. This graph right here is just tracking the past 7 days. And so we can look at the performance. For example, we send this specific message to this specific segment, and here's the performance that we saw within that segment. It's important to remember that these numbers are an aggregate. We cannot tell you this specific person showed up in Woodstock. What we can say is this is the national benchmark, and this is the throughput that we're seeing. And also just understanding that there's a little bit of nuance in terms of when they actually visit. So this is the kind of information that we're using all of the various tools that we'll speak about shortly, and that also John and Patrick will mention to sort of model how we're doing. Several other elements, including organic engagement, Facebook and GA are tied in, which we're not going to go into in great detail. But my hope is that this gives you just some idea and representation of the system that's tracking both the targeting, the advertising here, and also the owned space, where we're sending messages and developing relationships with these customers. And so, I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm sure there are some. Before I do, I want to make one more comment, and that is actually, Joe, something you said that kind of stood out to me when I walked in, and that is, first impressions are the most important ones. And when we think back at how sort of digital commerce worked, how travel and hospitality worked 15 years ago, I remember people would come up here every year for foliage. It didn't matter if the foliage was good, if it was bad, they showed up because there was no way to really find out, and they had a good time when they arrived. That's not really how it works anymore, because we're connected in such a way we can look up and see how the foliage is from our house in the Hamptons or from Portsmouth, and we can say, okay, let's go to Maine, let's go somewhere else, or let's time this perfectly. And then we sort of develop these super heavy periods for restaurants and businesses where there's a line out the door and there's nowhere to eat. What we want to do is try to even that out throughout the year. And so, Joe, you're right. First impressions are honestly the most important ones. And now in 2022, first impressions happen online. They're digital, they're not physical. And so that's the market, whether we choose to play in it or not, that's where we're sitting. And to be competitive and effective as time goes on, we need to look at that not as a challenge, but really as an opportunity. How can we get market share in the digital space and then bring those audiences to Woodstock? Not through billboards, not through expensive advertising, but through a system, through automation that targets, communicates, and effectively activates those leads. And I think at that point, I'd love to open it up. I'm here to answer any questions or specifics.
Do you want to keep sharing the screen, or for the discussion, can you stop?
Well,
Or you want to leave it? No, go ahead.
Why don't I just leave it?
Okay,
just in case, there's something I want to point to here.
All right, any questions? Marion?
Looking back on the budget page, the estimated monthly spend, what percentage of that is the paid social and Google ads, and what percentage of that is, updating and tweaking the system?
Great question. There's no Google advertising. Essentially, there's two models in digital advertising. You have like your search intercept. So essentially, in search, we're assuming there's a purchase intent. There could be some value here in future years in exploring that, but we're kind of on the other end of things. So we're talking to prospects who don't know about Woodstock. There's no purchase intent, right? They've never heard of us. So we're kind of making that first touch point on those social platforms and then following it up with more details. So, hey, how's it going? Here's something you might like because of some market research we've done. Oh, you like bikes? Great. Now you're in our outdoor activities flow, and we're going to talk to you for the next 6 months about bikes. And when we want you to show up, we're going to activate you. We're going to send you an incentive to come. Now, in terms of overall spend, I believe the budget you looked at right there is $1,000 a month in terms of those paid platforms. Now, remember, in this space, in hospitality, especially in our case, because we're not dealing with e-commerce, we're not tracking or solving rather for a purchase conversion, we don't really need to spend on the retargeting side. And that's what the real cost in those programs typically you see, right? We're looking at leads, we capture the lead, we own that lead, but to actually get them to spend money, most consumers aren't willing to spend money, they're not ready today. We have to keep spending on that lead until they show up. With this program, we're actually looking at the owned audience to do that work. So the cost per acquisition is zero, meaning we can spend less at the top of the funnel and get the same result because we're not actually tracking for our conversion.
Okay, assuming that the conversion is, in my head, would be the collection of the email. I was just curious of I think it was 8,000 per month.
Yeah, it's
What
1,000
percentage of that is the digital spend, and what percentage is the administration and the development of the program?
In that number it's about $1,000 per month.
$1,000
So 15% is digital spending, and
And the rest
85%
is the creation of the program and the content and all the other work that you do.
The creation and maintenance of the program, that's right.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Deborah?
I think Larry,
Larry. Sorry, Deborah, then Larry. Deborah, go ahead.
Larry was first, but
Oh, all right, Larry and then Deborah.
Okay. Yeah, this may be premature. It's a content question. What I'm hearing is a tourism orientation, and I'm wondering if there's thought to, in terms of economic development, a content that oriented towards bringing businesses here, families here to live here, that type of thing, because I think that's economic development.
Yeah, I can also speak to that, Larry. You may have noticed in that video was mentioned, a determination was made for both political and just resource reasons in the process over the past 6 months to eliminate that component from the first year and put that resource elsewhere. What I can tell you is that it is part of the process, and that's that relocation flow. And so what we're doing right now is based on a certain number of factors, we're tagging profiles for what we're calling relocation. Patrick came up to Burlington at one point and met with a few members of our team, and we talked about this in a few different lights. There's some opportunity to use this lead list as a sales tool, and not so much a sales tool of product, right, but a sales tool of the town. What's it like to live here, to play here, to send your kids to school here? And by the way, here's some houses you can buy. And that last piece is really kind of what got complicated, because there's a number of brokers, and how do we really pull that off? It's something we can certainly explore in the future years. But again, the long-term benefit here is, imagine you're a business, right? And you want to open a branch of your small local business in Woodstock, or you want to start a small business in Woodstock. What we're doing is saying, listen, you can start from scratch and pop up your store on Central Street and see what happens. Or you can open your business in Woodstock, and we're going to put your business on day one in front of 30,000 people. And we have the power to do that after this year. And so it's not just a sort of competitive value add for the layperson, the couple, family that wants to come visit and spend money here in the foliage season or the summer or the winter, quite frankly. It's about providing resources that we own to businesses that may want to open a shop on Central Street, that understand the power of digital marketing, but don't necessarily have the money, the dollars to do it themselves.
So Larry, the short answer is yes, and we can add that component in.
But not yet.
But it's not there yet. There's a space for it. Okay. Deborah?
Yes. Thank you for the presentation. Awesome. And awesome work. Questions that I have for you are like, I'm a visual person. So are you able to show us what the content is that you're putting out? Like actually show us the campaigns, like here's what the posts look like. Here's what the interactions look like. How many stills are you doing versus video, those kind of things. And if we're going to do this over a long period of time, I understand the hitting them over the head, but we're also going to want to change it up as we go forward. It's not just that you develop a script one year and use it every year. You have to bend, to what's going on.
Deborah, it's completely AI driven, so that everything keeps changing, and we keep finding what's the best and keep plugging in and basically speak to control on a consistent basis. So it's actually hard in a sense to show all of the creative.
I think Deborah's talking about the own side though, which
okay.
On the top of funnel, like Patrick said, essentially what we've done is we've done some market research and we've evaluated a number of segments. Those are interest groups within that market research. Now, those specific segments, let's say you have 200 images and 15 videos, okay? What we're doing is we're essentially dropping that into an algorithm and setting that for a goal. There are really 3 goals we work with in digital marketing: a purchase conversion, a traffic optimization, or a lead optimization. And everything we're doing, we're saying, listen, we're telling the algorithm to solve for the lowest cost per lead with the best content. Meaning, in an audience of several 100,000 people, we're throwing all 200 images, all 15 videos, and we're seeing what works. And the data that drives that says, okay, this is what people want to see. Mountain biking is mountain biking. But people looking at mountain bikers driving through the center of Woodstock and Mount Tom, that's converting a heck of a lot better than mountain bikers in the woods with no context.
Right. No, I totally get all that stuff. I just want to see the work. I mean, I want to see the visuals. I want to know what it is you guys are putting out and what's the vibe of what you're putting out. It would be great for us to see that.
And so that's what I just described as half. Less than half, actually. That's like the top of funnel. The majority of the work's happening in the own space and Patrick and the marketing team, they have that creative. And so my suggestion, Deborah, would just to be reach out to Patrick. I'm happy to meet with you if timing works as well. And he can walk you through what that content looks like. There's a lot of content. One of the reasons, I would expect that our business won this contract is that we own our own content house, which is fairly atypical. And we have 6 people full-time in Burlington that only build content. And so we spent 12 days over the past year in Woodstock developing content in every single one of these segments. Awesome. And then also the Woodstock Inn, through another contract, we have generously agreed to donate equal, actually, if not greater content to our program. So there's enough content to effectively run this seasonally right now.
And what we're gonna
I
do.
just love this. I mean, I think I don't think I'm the only
Yeah.
one that would love to see it. That's all.
All right, let me put together like a PDF so that give you a smattering of what everything is, that, and I'll send it out to all the EDC members.
I think that's awesome.
Or maybe we even publish it on the website.
We can
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Other questions, Joe?
One of the things that was discussed when we initially talked about marketing was the availability of photographs for periodicals they call the chamber.
Yep,
and ask,
that's being built right now, Joe. We're finding a software to use. We have all the content. We're gonna basically put that out. Marie from the
Chamber.
no, artistry is heading that up, and we're going to basically create a media channel. So anybody who's any magazine or publication that wants to grab images will be able to go to a space, register, and we'll be able to track who's taking what. We'll create a side for businesses in Woodstock to be able to use, and then we'll have the big general pool to use for all marketing. So the idea will be to have the media people not have the same images as the business people, so that we're not using the same 3 images all the time. So that is in the process. We just haven't finalized it yet.
I have a quick comment.
Well, hold on a second, Joe, did that answer your question or?
I think so. We'll just wait and see how it works out.
Yeah, it'll be launched. I'm not sure exactly when, but soon. And we'll announce it so that everyone.
Let me just say one more thing.
It'll be available to all interested parties, not just the chamber.
Yes.
Joe, let me just say one more thing on that, just for reference. There's content, there's static, there's video, there's graphic content that's been developed. The real value of that content isn't the content innately itself, it's the ability to put it in front of your customers. And one of the things that we've talked a lot about over the past 12 months and how we carry this program forward is setting up systems to allow local merchants to participate in the actual execution and deployment, not just the content. So imagine this, right? Restaurant A, small business A, retail shop A, whatever it is, right? We have the ability now to put those businesses in front of these audiences ourselves in real time, and we can do that from a segmentation perspective. For example, we have a segment that is a food, we have in shopping interest. We know who those people are. And so we can tell them, look, here are your food and shopping options in Woodstock. And we could even say, listen, here's a new cafe, restaurant, high-end restaurant, quick lunch spot that just opened in Woodstock. Come check it out. And so what happens when we do that is we're talking to 5, 10, 15,000 individuals across New England and saying, listen, come to Woodstock to experience this new restaurant. The economic impact of that goes beyond the restaurant. It impacts retail, gas stations, Billings Farm, nonprofits, the History Center. It's a holistic view just from one specific impact that we're making, one impression.
And this is the idea of the sort of the big proposal, the 3-year proposal, because we've just scratched the surface of where we want to be and what we can do. We want to keep building and keep adding on these functions to make it more powerful for not only Woodstock, but the Woodstock businesses.
All right, I want to have a chance to go back to the to the proposal to continue funding this program or not. Are there any other questions from EDC members? Oh, sorry, Marion. Go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I just wanted to say, as someone who's worked adjacent to these kinds of campaigns, so for every question that's come up, the answers have been what I would consider to be the right answers. But beyond that, I would say the execution of something at this level with this level of integration is really complex. And I just want to say, I think this is beyond what a town of Woodstock's size could expect. I mean, I think anybody who's not familiar with this space, I would just say this is a very well executed, thorough plan from everything that I've seen.
I appreciate that. It's certainly been a passion project for myself. I want to retire to Woodstock in 40 years and have Woodstock be what it is and what's special and raise my family here. And so it's important that, the rules are changing and we need to adapt and change with those rules. And you don't have to like it, but we have to respect that. And that's just a reality. of the world we live in.
Yeah, and we have to remember too, we're not the only place in Vermont that people want to come to. So having this program is going to put us ahead of the, you know, the Burlingtons and the Stows and so forth, because we'll be doing this stuff on a regular automated basis and just continually improving it.
All right, let's move back, Charles, thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
Let's move back to, wait, sorry. Here we go. I think if I do this, it comes up better. Okay. There are 45,832 proposals we could consider, but just to keep it simple, we put up these three. There, option 1 and 2, from left to right, does require shutting down and then starting up. There's some moderate cost to doing that because it takes these guys, you know, they have to reassign the teams and all that good stuff.
And we'll only have the summer flows.
Yeah. So we get another season from, if we stop completely, we won't get anything from this season. We'll have to develop the fall season next year. If we do the middle proposal, we get the fall season, but we have the stop and start option. If we continue and allocate the full amount of funds, we don't get as many leads. We get no new leads under A. I mean, through September 15th, we get them and then we stop getting them. We get a medium number under B or column 2, and then we get the full number under column 3. In all three cases, the marketing group will develop a multi-year proposal. They'll probably have more information to develop that proposal and tune it a little bit better in the second column, and they'll have ample information in the third column. We have about, we allocated about $300,000 in our grants for 2022. We are currently forecasting exceeding our revenue forecast by about $55,000. That's not necessarily connected to this, but we have, if you want to think about it in those terms, the funds are available. We have ungranted balances, assuming all of the 2022 grantees take 100% of their funds. We typically have averaged 95%. Some portion of the funds don't get spent, although that's a small amount. So we have the funds. We would have 400,000 in reserve if we allocated the full amount instead of 440,000. I think the number is 440 is what we have, what we expect to have at the end of this year after we receive our funding for the last 2 quarters. So I think maybe the easiest thing to do is to just go around briefly and just say 1, 2, or 3 if you're in favor of 1, 2, or 3. Is there anyone who feels like you can't vote for any of these? Well, sorry, it looks like Larry and Michael have raised their hands. So do you want to make some, Larry and then Michael?
Yeah, I wasn't going to go the 1, 2, 3. I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The 8,333 per month, would that continue on into foreseeably if we renew, presumably we renew this? Is that comes to about $100,000 a year? Is that the idea?
That reflects the current contract level, which would be, so for the first 12 months, that's what we paid. We're simply proposing here to continue that payment and that scope of work, basically, for another, to get us to a larger proposal and an annual funding process, potentially, if we have an annual meeting, you know.
So what I guess I'm getting at is is there any idea what kind of funding is going to be required starting in February, March for the ensuing years? Can you use that 833 per month as a benchmark or not?
Yeah, I think we can, because we're going to come back with a 3-year proposal that's going to spell out what we're doing and adding additional functionality. So I would say, yeah, we could probably use that for now.
It's not going to be 4 and it's not going to be 16. Would that be per month? Is that it's not going to be cut in half,
right?
And it's not going to double.
No. Yeah, definitely won't cut in half.
So roughly $100,000 a year.
Yeah, to start. I'm a
start?
marketing guy. I'm gonna go for as much money as I can get. It's all gonna be based, and this is the thing that's really important to understand. This is completely based on measuring and things that work, we do more of, and things that don't work, we don't do. And that you're gonna always be able to see the results and see where the money's going and what it's generating. And that's very important to understand with this. This is not spend the money and don't know what happens. This is spend the money and know exactly what happens.
All right, Michael?
I think it was a great presentation. I think it's a great strategy. But here's my concern is that, we've had so many people move here in the past couple of years. And in my experience alone, I know of 7 families that are leaving. And these are people with young children. These are the people that we want to attract here, the people that we want to stay here. And they're leaving for a variety of reasons. But I just don't, when we're looking at taking 25% of our budget, $100,000 a year and putting it towards marketing, I don't think that's keeping those people here. I'd rather see that money allocated toward things that are concrete that are going to keep people here, whether it's the housing, whether it's childcare or businesses, things for people to do, whatever. But I feel like, that's the problem. And that's just in my small bubble of 7 families leaving already. It's crazy. So, I think this is a great campaign, and I'm not saying anything negative about the campaign. I'm just saying when we have a X amount of dollars, I feel like we need to allocate it to keep people here, not bring more tourists in, because, we don't need more foliage tourists, right? We don't need more of that. We just need people to stay once they're here. And I don't think we're doing a good job with that.
But remember, this is not just about driving traffic to peak times. This is also a driving traffic on off-peak times. It's
If it's not doing anything to keep those people here, how does this keep families from leaving?
Right,
Getting
Patrick,
more
let's,
to come.
It just doesn't. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't.
Michael,
And you're measuring
hold
this
on a
out,
sec.
we'll see results in like 3-4 years. Right now we need to really focus on what's keeping people here, what would keep them here, and why are they leaving? I think we need to find that out and allocate our dollars towards those things.
all right, Mika, and then,
Otherwise, endless tourism.
yeah, Mika, and then Charles, and then Patrick, if you want to add something, which is fine. You can. I just want to give Mika. Go ahead, Mika.
Yeah, I'm struggling with the same thing. $100,000 is a lot of money. And that although we don't necessarily have housing projects on deck, I'm guessing that when we do, they're going to take it, a big chunk of what we have available. And if $100,000 of that is going toward marketing, I think I'm struggling with how, same thing, Michael, is how are we keeping people here? How are we helping people stay here? Why are people leaving? Similarly, I think it's a great presentation, and clearly there is a lot of work that's gone into this. And I think just sort of piggybacking a little bit on what Marion said earlier, clearly this is an extremely sophisticated machine. And I just can't help but wonder, is there some kind of progress that we could make with just slightly less sophistication? That maybe doesn't come in at 100K.
Let me just, I think these comments are very relevant. We don't have the 3-year proposal in front of us. So if they are relevant, the decision at hand is whether or not to pick, I would say roughly speaking, one of these 3 types of proposals. Your comments are all to that point, but I'm just saying that just remember that what we're going to decide very shortly is one of these 3 proposals, not the $100,000 proposal. But again, Mika, that's not to say your comment isn't directly relevant to our topic at hand. It's just I don't want to get into a big debate about what the 3-year proposal should look like.
Well, and I think the other thing we have to understand.
Well, Patrick, hold on. Let me just give. It was Mika, then Charles, then Patrick, then Deborah and Joe.
Okay.
Sorry, Charles. Yeah. So
Hey, Michael, this is Charles. I'm still in the room. I'm just gonna walk over the mic.
no, the mics are
That works for me. Michael, you're not wrong. I've, like I said, lived here for 27 years, and I've seen, various ebbs and flows in Woodstock. There have been several Woodstocks, early 2000s, the economic collapse, the rebuilding, and then what we currently are experiencing as a result of COVID. So I want to say I acknowledge that, and you're not entirely wrong. On the other side of this, what we're trying to do here is future-proof Woodstock for what happens when. It's not about today, it's about tomorrow, and it is about 5 years from now. And so the way my team looks at this and the way that the marketing committee in Woodstock has looked at this is how can we build resources so that they are there when we need them before it's too late. And so I would just kind of invite you to think about it from that perspective. The economic hub of Woodstock is our tourist economy, it's the downtown. If we don't have the downtown, if we don't have shops, if we have empty storefronts, if that component of Woodstock is struggling, people aren't going to want to live here the same way they won't want to live here if Cabot Block is falling apart. It's not, this or that. There's a challenge and an issue in many areas. Money needs to be spent, no doubt, on a disparate number of priorities. But marketing is one of those priorities that keeps the train moving. And if we want to be in a position when the economy changes, when it's harder to bring prospects in, when those people who went to Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont are now picking one, we need to be in a position to bring them here and to support our economic center, because that is what drives the economy here in Woodstock. That's why people want to live. And so I would just, invite you to think about that in kind of the bigger context. And again, you're not wrong, but there's a little bit more to it from that long-term perspective.
Patrick,
Okay.
Deborah, Joe, Marion.
I think the other thing to keep in mind too is the other things, there are a lot of things that need to be done in Woodstock, but the money that we have, if we take this money and put it in somewhere else, it's still a pittance in the bucket. The big proposals that we're talking about that people that are going to do are going to be to drive big change. And to do that, we're going to be able, like for housing and childcare, the money we have is going to do nothing. What it can do is incentivize people. And so I don't think you should look at this as, we're taking a third or 25% of our budget. And because what are you going to do with it elsewhere? I think we need to see big proposals, which is the whole concept of what we've been talking about for the last 3 meetings, and that's what we're doing here with the marketing thing is doing a big idea, that future-proofs, as Charles had said, Woodstock's ups and downs, as well as how many times do we see businesses struggle in off-season stuff? This is a way we can also use that program to do that. There's just so many opportunities that this brings to future-proof and to help business, and we are a tourist area. No matter how we look at it, we're a tourist area.
Deborah, Joe, and then Marion. Sorry, excuse me 1 second, Deborah. Just not to state the obvious. Trina, we do have a housing proposal, which is probably a 10-minute discussion. At least I hope it is. We're going to obviously run past 8:30, but I'm going to let this conversation continue because I think there's important things to be said. So, Deborah, and then Joe and Marion. Deborah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll keep it kind of quick. I think in order for the money that's already been spent to have meaning, we need to go through the fall. The fall is the key point, is the key time, one of the most key times, of our year. And it's just important to get that data before we decide how and what we do in the future. And I just feel like they've done a really good job up until now, but in order to be able to make any assessment, we need to continue through the fall. And by doing so, we will also have a base of names and et cetera, so that if we need to spend less as we move forward, we'll have a larger base to go with, and we can discuss what kind of, the 2, 3, 5-year plan then. But for my opinion, we need to do fall to be able to have that conversation later.
All right, thank you, Deborah. Joe, and then Marion.
There's a lot of mixed thoughts going through my head. I think 3,500. First of all, Charlie made a great presentation. I think the program is really well designed, and functionally, it's very impressive. 3,500 people. We need more people. We need more housing. We need schools. I'm struggling with it. I really am. Deborah has a great suggestion. I think I could lean towards, let's get through the fall and see what happens. If there's the startup cost is going to be minimal compared to what $100,000 is going to cost. So, yeah, I have reservations about the need for it, not the quality of it, not, not the job well done. It is, but I'm curious about whether we need the need for it right now. That's my opinion.
Okay, Marion, and then I have a comment.
So I have a comment and a question. And the comment is, I would say actually, beyond fall, I would think it's valuable to collect data for a full year because I know that there are predictable sways in tourism businesses. I know from experience in like the wedding business. I mean, it's just certain times every year, there's different things that happen and they're very predictable and recurring. So I think there's value. My question to, I don't know, Patrick or Charles is it an all or nothing? In other words, is it $8,333 or nothing for the month? Or is there any way to, for example, spend $20,000 to collect some data through the end of the year? Or is it just like, it's $8,000 a month or we don't do it?
Yeah, I think I understand your question. This is something that we've talked a lot about because I met with Patrick prior to this meeting. We looked at a few different scenarios. The 8,000 through October, mid-October is kind of like a stopgap measure. The purpose of that is to develop a few resources that we would then use for the fall winter season.
It's not mid-October. In this model, it's the end of, it wasn't mid-October, end of November. Yeah. Middle column.
And then so building those resources that we'd be using throughout those months. Kind of as a long-term plan though, it sort of puts us in a disadvantaged environment. The way I explained it to Patrick, listen, we're an e-commerce company and you have a set number of funding and you want to post some great numbers for the quarter, option 2. It's great, spend the money and we're going to see results. But when we're looking at this holistically from a long-term perspective, it somewhat puts us in like a disadvantaged scenario with the data in a yearly perspective. Woodstock.
I'm not sure if I was clear in my question. What I'm asking is there a possibility of saying we want to collect data through February? Is there a way to do that by spending less per month than the 8,000? Or is it we spend 8,000 or we spend nothing per month? That's the question.
Nika's asking if we can speak up. You're right by a.
I am right by my, sorry, could you hear that? Is that better?
Maybe keep it close, yeah.
Yeah, I would say yes. The short answer is yes. We could sit here and just kind of pin numbers out and say, okay, here's what we can do for that, right? That's a little bit of a longer term process. What I would say is the program was designed to function the number of resources, and that's what this number makes up. And so to be effective to actually run this how it should, you're familiar with marketing agencies. So think about it this way. If we're running a program which relies on data, and 2 out of 20, 2 out of 10, 15 pieces of data that the program is designed to evaluate aren't there, we're in a disadvantaged scenario. Woodstock has a problem with starting and stopping. I've heard it, Joe, I've heard you say it, I've heard many of you say it. We try this thing, we give it a shot. We're under 2 months into this. Right. So my strong suggestion is that we push this through March 1st and we evaluate at that point. If we say, look, this didn't work, fine. But if we can say, look, here is the economic impact that this program generated, and here's the lead list, and here's the data that we have, there's not, in terms of economic development, we can show you on paper the impact of the program. And so it's a pretty cut and dry A plus B equals C.
And the idea of lessening the money, we're changing, we're doing this at this amount, and then we're going to change it. It's the data set.
But the digital spend could be consistent. It's I guess I don't understand what the other work that's happening, how much of that 8,000 is new content creation, how much of it is administration, how much is it data crunching? And I know that you said the digital spend is around 1,500. So I just don't know.
The digital spend in the updated program will be around 1,000.
Right.
The other aspects, software licensing costs, team management, program management, data analysis, and then the creative is probably the largest single item in there. That's not just content creation in terms of editor, photographer, shooter, producer. It's creative in terms of the graphic development, the design, the mock-up, the prototyping.
And you're doing that as you go. So in other words, like the fall content is being created out of that fall budget and the December content is being created out of the December budget.
Exactly.
Or in advance, but.
So this first year, a lot of that heavy lifting is being done. So if we go through to March, we'll have the bulk of the framework set up so that then the changing of the content should be easy.
The way I best describe it, Deborah, the way I best describe it, right, is we I would like to see a scenario where we use this year to build the resources. And after we build those resources, they need to be maintained, but the maintenance cost is much lower. And so then we're in an environment where we can either look at this scope as a number and say, okay, how do we further the program? Do we look at influencer management? Do we talk about that? Or do we, which a lot of the other proposals for this contract mentioned, or do we say, oh, let's build an on the ground attribution model. So we can literally say this person showed up, we're going to engage this business, this restaurant and this store, there's incentives, and how do we tie it to the ground? And so that's kind of the next evolution, but we can't get to that point, whether it's activation, influencer, or just simply spending less money until we build this architecture for every single season of the year. And so that's why we're putting ourselves again in somewhat of a disadvantaged scenario if we say, listen, we're going to go through through November. That's not even a year, right? And you've spent the past 12 months building the program, past 2 months launching it.
Okay. All right.
John, I have one more quick comment.
Oh, sorry, Joe, I didn't see that. Go ahead, Joe. And then I'll.
To me, it boils down to two choices. We're going to spend money to get more people in here, into town, to spend more money, one choice. Or the second choice would be, are we focusing on taking care of the people we have here and have a better living, vibrant community that does exist, and how we can cultivate that? I mean, to me, that's the choices. Either we want more people to come here and spend more money, or we take care of the people we have and let it germinate and grow from there. That's my.
One more.
Yeah, all right, go ahead.
I just want to point out that some of the people who live here are the businesses that this program is supporting. And so
Right.
I don't think it's a separate.
Well, yeah.
Well, I'm one of them. You're right.
And it's not an either or.
Yeah, but yeah, let me make that point, Patrick. Yeah, so my last point is, sorry, I see Deborah's raising her hand. All right, this is really truly the last one, and then I'm going to make a final comment. Deborah, go ahead. Oh, you're lowering your hand.
I have a feeling we're probably simpatico on what I'm about to say, which is like, I feel like what's clear in this conversation, if I can just put something on the table, is we're clearly not ready for the number 3. Because there's too much, it would have too much conversation. We're not there yet as a group. However, I think the thing that I'd like to see us talk about is number 2, which is the midline, which is, it's just a shame that it would be such a shame to have spent all the money that we did to set up this program to only run it for 2 months. It doesn't make economic sense. We need to be fiscally responsible. We need to at least put it through the fall season and then have a larger conversation about how to move it forward and how to get into more things like what Marion was talking about, which is how much money do we want to budget to do the support. But the work that was done needs the next couple of months. So I'd like to put that on the table.
Okay.
I'd still like to vote for all.
Yeah, so we're going to vote on all, despite your sense of, oh my God. Yeah, so I know, Mika, you haven't said a lot, so I want to give you a chance to go ahead, Mika. Please, no one else raise your hand. Mika, go ahead. No, wait, you're muted. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I think that what is clear is that we are not ready for a 3-year proposal. I think, and granted, we haven't seen it, but I think it's hard for some of us to even wrap our heads around 1 year, much less 3. But I can't say that I wouldn't necessarily go for the full year, although I'm hesitant on a lot of levels. I do actually think it's probably a good spend for now. I'd love to talk more though about trying to get that number down a little, so that we're not always looking at $100,000 budget.
Well, again, I don't know no one knows what the 3-year proposal is going to be. So thank you for the comments. Let me just add one comment. It really has to do and from my view, the most important thing is we were setting up, I think, more of a false than a true choice between serving the people who are here and serving the people who are visitors. Let me give 2 examples of that. First of all, it strikes me that you can't want both of these things at the same time. You can't want empty storefronts to be filled and stay filled and want to not market to tourists. You can only want one of those 2 things. If you don't want to market to tourists, that's fine. There's some benefits to that, but you have to accept empty storefronts because people who open stores aren't stupid. They go where the people go, right? They'll go to Maine or New Hampshire, or they'll go to Stowe. They'll go to Stowe. You know, so that doesn't make the choice any easier, but we should not be sitting here believing that we're going to launch 2 programs. One is we're going to cut marketing, and then we're going to go try to fill storefronts. That's not how storefronts get filled. Another example of that is why people move here. You know, I don't think that people who become residents of Woodstock kind of are spawned from nothing. They are spawned from being tourists. I think we did a survey. I don't remember exactly the data, but we asked like 20 families or 30 families who had come to Woodstock in the last 3 years, and 3 of them had never been to Woodstock before they came, and the other 27 had. They were tourists, you know, in some form. So I think I'm not saying, obviously, if we spend money on marketing, Michael is right, we can't spend those dollars on housing or childcare or even events for local people. I mean, those things do directly serve the local community. But I think by and large, having a balanced program where we create a bigger flow of people will yield a bigger community in the end. And that bigger community will pay tax dollars and will support the economy and will give us better infrastructure and better schools and better housing, ultimately better housing and better childcare and so forth. So I don't feel like we have to make a black and white choice. I think it's much more subtle than that. So, okay, we've had a chance to make lots of comments. What I want to suggest is that we simply vote. I think the logical way to do it, I'm not trying to favor proposal 3, but if proposal 3 passes, there's no reason to vote on the others. If proposal 3 fails, then we'll vote on proposal 2. If proposal 2 fails, then we've implicitly voted on proposal 1. So, oh yes, we have
Is it possible to make a comment?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, we have one person other than Charles from the community who's here in person. Just say your name, please, and then.
My name is Steve Fulkerson. I'm a brand new resident here. Last 2 months, moved to Woodstock with my wife. We bought a property right up the road on Route 4 next to the Kinder. So we're brand new here.
Welcome.
And it's a delight. And I'll just say very quickly, I had never been to Vermont 3 years ago. I drove into Vermont with my wife, said, I've got to go see Vermont. There's a sign that says Woodstock, Vermont. Oh, let's go that way. I drove into your town. I stopped it at the green, looked at the covered bridge, said, this is iconic. This is gorgeous. We drove out of town. We just bought a place, you know, in January and closed on it. We're retired, but we own kind of a business, not because we have. Part of the reason I'm here is because you're dealing with housing, and we have 2 apartments, and we own the building that also is where the real estate agency is, right up the road here. Thank you all for your great comments. That's really impressive, and I'm really grateful to be here. Just say one thing to your great dialogue and everybody who's participating here. I think it's great. I love it. Small town America is the place to be. I would just say you're building a foundation. And I'm a former general contractor and a facilities manager in higher education and care facilities. You're building the foundation here long term. And you don't build a foundation on lousy material. You know, you're looking for something to continue this great town here, the great school system. To me, it's a keeper. And the proposal that you're working on here is just the basic. It's the foundation. And it's the fuel that's going to drive every other proposal that you folks have here from my perspective. It's just a way of encouraging the businesses that you are obligated to support, the community, the schools, the housing, the daycare that you are committed to support to help the rest of the community thrive. And so to me, it's just great effort on everybody's behalf. And I would just say from your name? Charles, you know, I'm not a techie and I didn't get here by technology, but I think you're really got a good proposal there to say, let's see what happens for a year. You can always shut it down after a year. You can always cut that out, but you're going to have really good data in the next few months to use for another year. You're getting 2 years of information, I think, from the proposal.
Well, our proposal here is to end, thank you for your comments. Sorry, did you want to, go ahead.
No, so I'm just saying, although it's going to be for a year, you're going to be able to use the content
Right.
the following year.
Yes.
So you're getting 2 years of
use.
input, and it's just great fuel. And I think all of those help support all your other efforts. The housing piece that I'd love to talk about, participate and hear more about, the daycare, the infrastructure, and I'll call the downtown area, the revitalization. That's all things that come from your foundation. So I'll shut up.
All right,
Great to
terrific.
meet
And
you.
if you wait a few minutes, if Trina hasn't fallen asleep, you'll hear a little bit about housing. All right, so what I'm going to propose to do, just logically, I'm not trying to favor one proposal or the other. I happen personally to favor one, but we're going to vote, if it's all right, unless anyone disagrees. I'd like to vote on proposal 3. If that fails, we'll vote on proposal 2. If that fails, we have implicitly voted on proposal 1.
Second that.
So, all right, so I'm going to move that we adopt the continued proposal to fund this through what we expect to be the next funding period. And I hope we have funding for this and for all the other projects before March, by March 1st. So I'm going to make that motion.
Second.
Maren has seconded. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And it was right, it's not going to be unanimous, I think. So we need to do this by a roll call. So I'm just going to ask each person. Marion? Oh, sorry, by the way, there are 9 of us. There's only 8 here, but we need a majority of the appointed members, which would be the same, I guess, as 8. So we need 5 votes of the 9 in order to pass, even though there are only 8 of us here. So Marion?
Aye.
Is 1. Patrick?
Aye.
Me is aye. I'm going to go Mika. Are you there,
Aye.
Mika?
Yeah, no, I was thinking.
You're thinking?
Aye.
Okay,
She's aye.
4 is passed. I'm just going down the road. Deborah? Oh, Deborah, you're muted. All right, well, I'm going to pass. I'll come back to Deborah. Maybe she stepped away for a minute. Joe?
No,
No. Who's that? Michael?
No.
No. Okay, so that's 4 and 2. Okay, so I guess I should keep count.
Yeah.
Okay, Larry?
Yes.
Okay, and Trina is, so that's only 7. So, and Deborah, are you
Sorry, I
there?
stepped away for a second.
All right, so we're voting, with the motion is we're going to start with the right-hand proposal. If that fails, we'll go to the second one. And if that fails, we've implicitly adopted the third one. So how do you vote on the proposal to allocate through February, the right-hand proposal for $45,832?
Aye.
Sorry,
Aye.
you said aye? All right, so the vote is 6-2, and Todd is with 1 person missing. So proposal 3 passes. We are funding this through February. I think this is a great discussion. I think we will have a similar form of this discussion when we begin to fund our big, either at our annual meeting, if we have an annual meeting, that's a different issue, but we're going to have to make funding decisions early in the year. Thank you for the discussion, and we'll move.
Let me just say a quick word too. I know you guys have a lot on your plate. I think we made a great decision here tonight. I know from our end, we're looking forward to executing on continued. Michael and Joe, I hear your concerns. I hear all of your concerns, and I just want to put it out there. I'm happy to meet individually and talk about, some of your concerns and how we can best leverage this to meet some of those needs. We have a lot of data and a lot of moving components here, and it's not necessarily set in stone. And so at the bottom line, you're here for a reason. And I want to make sure your insight is incorporated. So I just want to make myself as well available, should that be the case.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, thanks, everyone. It's a very powerful discussion. I think it's made an important decision, and I think we got some very good points of view out on all sides of this issue. And we will continue, I think, to debate this as we should. It's not you don't solve these issues for all time. All right, the last item on our agenda is a housing update, and we have a specific proposal. Trina, why don't you raise it? And we don't have any paperwork, Trina, so I'm not sure what it is that you're going to be asking us. So
can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. I'm Trina Tolliver. I haven't met all of you. I'm the Woodstock Housing Advisor. And I'm here tonight to present that the Housing Group Fund Committee has one application that we would like to recommend for the EDC Housing Grant Funds approval this evening. The application is for the Accessory Dwelling Workforce Rental Program. The applicant meets the program eligibility requirements and will rent it to a qualified tenant that meets our local workforce requirements. This application has been thoroughly reviewed and is recommended by the Housing Group Fund Committee, and that consists of Jill Davies, Deborah Green, Marion Abrams, and Patrick Foltz. The applicant is Tisha Buss. The property is located at 1135 West Woodstock Road. That's at the corner of Mill Road and Route 4. And she wants to build a 2-car garage with a 1-bedroom apartment upstairs. The plan structure is prefabricated, so that should cut down on some of her costs and simplify the build out. She has a contractor who will begin as soon as they have the materials, and the goal is to have the exterior completed before winter weather and then finish the interior work. She already has a qualified tenant in mind for the rental who meets our requirements for the local workforce.
And they meet the requirement for the the level of the rent.
Correct. Yes. She actually is working with the state too, because the state has some other funds. The project is about $150,000 project overall, but she's doing some other things with the state. They have that VHIP funding that's available as well. So, but she's ready to go. The qualified tenant is going to pay the rent amount that we are requesting.
Can you say what that is?
Sure. A 1-bedroom, hold on, means that they have to charge a rent of less than $1,000 or less. For a 1-bedroom.
And I'm addressing this to you, Trina, or any members of the committee, but to you, that the committee has identified a way of verifying that the rental agreement is for the term that we talked about, and there's a verification process before in order to distribute the funds.
Correct. We have we've worked with an attorney, so we have a legal agreement, and we have gotten that back from the attorney. There's a promissory note as well. We will have that signed by the applicant and the town manager, and it will be recorded with the land records until the end of their agreement. In this case is 3 years, because they are required to rent it for 3 years. It could be 1-year terms, but a 3-year total. The agreement also stipulates compliance checks. So as the housing advisor, I'll check in with the owner of the property and throughout the building of the unit. But after it's built and is being rented, there's 6-month compliance checks. So I will check in with the landlord and make sure that they have validated local employment for the tenant and that they are still there leasing the place under the original lease.
Deborah, are you itching your hand or raising it, or both?
I'm itching my hand, but I did have a question for Trina, just with clarity. But wasn't it studio was 1,000 and one bedroom was 1,500? I just want to make sure that we're
Yeah,
copacetic.
good question. I'm trying to find it here in my notes.
I think you're right, Deborah.
I think it's 1,500, just so that people don't get surprised when they charge that.
Yes, I think you're right. I've got, it's in here somewhere.
Yeah, I think studio was 1,000.
And you had me sit here for 2.5 hours.
I
so
know,
I've
I
lost my train
know.
of thought. Yes, you're right. It's
Sorry, I'm just trying to help. You're doing
Is this
fantastic
a
job.
test?
I mean,
Okay.
This woman's doing
so-
an amazing job, but I
Hold
think
on.
I
You
think
know,
that-
I've got it here. Hold on. I'm just going to confirm this because that's how I roll. Yes. Thank you, Deborah. 1,000 for a studio, 1,500 for a 1-bedroom.
Larry?
I'm just curious, would this have happened without our program?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think she would be continuing with this. My gut is no, because she's also asking the state for assistance as well through another program that they have that's trying to help get ADUs built, apartments.
Marion?
And Larry, I would just say, oh, sorry, and Larry, I would say that there's probably a good chance, even if she would have built it, the question is, would she be renting it at this reduced rental rate without this incentive? And I think that's, an important.
Or would she put it on Airbnb?
Exactly.
Good point.
Exactly, right.
Exactly. And this is the first one we've had. We're really excited about it. I think we couldn't have picked a better applicant to be our first.
And we have the capacity to do 3.
Yes.
Other comments or questions? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Trina.
No, that's all.
Deborah?
Trina, would you mind just letting people know some of the good stuff? Like we're coming forward with one, but you're working with a number of people already in this first round. This is not the only one that's.
Yes. We've got a lot of activity going on, a lot of inquiries, even from folks that are just landlords and want to rent local, that don't even want to be part of the program, but want to know how we're defining a qualified tenant and doing some of these other things. So it's kind of like a snowball avalanche effect. The more we keep talking about it, now we've got other landlords who are wanting to kind of follow suit. So that's been interesting. We've got a couple new actually we have one other new application for ADU and it's still being vetted. So I don't really want to get into the details of that right now. But yes, and then we've got someone on who's interested to move forward with the rental incentive. Somebody has passed away and this is the daughter who lives out of state and she's interested in potentially renting that out to a local workforce tenant as well. So yes, so it's pretty exciting that we're getting some activity on it and lots of questions. So
Patrick?
Yeah, I think one of the things too to mention is it's been amazing how the community has stepped up, as Trina had said, people who aren't even looking for the incentives, but looking how they can help, and have properties that they want to consider. So we've opened up a good thing.
great. Yes, I think so. And then, I'm kind of doing some different things where landlords will call and ask me about some tenants, which we really haven't ventured down that path, but I've reached out to municipal offices and some of the schools. So we have teacher contacts and other managers over there in the fire department and police department. If they have any employees or staff that are looking to move here or already going to move here later for a job, I can share that information with folks when they call.
So we're approving tonight, right?
Yeah, well, so from a process, are there any more questions for Trina? I'd like to
Could you
put,
just state the grant amount? I don't think we said
the
that.
grant amount is 10,000.
Yes.
Right, so we award, right, so just to remind everybody, we awarded and the select board approved a grant of $30,000 to the ADU housing program. We agreed that the housing working group would that would do what they've done, but that the full EDC would vote on the 10,000 on each applicant. And the same is true for the rental program. So we're now voting to approve. I just want to say before we vote, this shouldn't affect our vote, but before we vote is we need to go, I feel that to be safe, once we vote, if we approve this, I would like to, before we give them the money, I would like to take this to the select board, tell them that we believe that we don't need their approval because they've approved the 30,000 to the program, and that we should, in the same way they don't set the ticket price at TEDx, we gave the grant to the event, they don't need that. But I'd like to give them the chance to say, yes, that's correct, or no, we feel uncomfortable about that. And if they feel uncomfortable about it, then we will, of course, we work at their agreement, so we'll have to ask them for approval.
I make a motion, we approve of this person.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
John, may I ask a question? So I would like to clarify, are you saying that we should not move forward with the agreement until we get the select board approval? And if so, we just missed their meeting, so that puts us out another month on this.
No, they meet every 2 weeks. And in fact, I can ask them immediately whether they are comfortable not approving it. And I'm not just going to ask them, I'm going to tell them that our belief is they don't need to approve it.
Yeah.
Unless they object, we're going to go ahead with it. And I can talk to Joe directly, and maybe if he wants me to, one other member. My instinct is
that would be great.
That they'll be fine with it. However, these are, we do need to operate. If the select board is uncomfortable, it's going to be worth a 2-week delay. This is going to be a long-term program of some fashion. So
exactly.
So
yeah, it just wasn't expected. Yeah, we thought that we'd had this discussion at one point early on, and I thought it had been addressed. So
it has been, but when we come right, it did. And I apologize. I guess I'm changing that point. I'm not necessarily. I'm hoping that the process is what we discussed, but I feel an obligation to ask the select board. All right. Any other discussion?
Okay.
No, hearing none. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I can't see Michael and Mika.
Michael says aye.
Okay, are there any opposed? Okay, so we don't need to. So
thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I highly expect this to be approved. I actually expect that they won't need to review it, but I just feel. So I'll keep you posted, Trina. I'll talk to Joe tomorrow if I can.
Great job.
Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody.
I think we still have a chance to end this meeting before 9 o'clock. If we end it in the next 16 seconds.
We end.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you, everybody. Good work.
Thank you.
Aye.
John, nice job. We got a lot of boxes.
Thank you for
checked tonight.
attending.
Yeah, welcome.
And your comments as well. Appreciate it.